world or the universe or something like that. Some other people might say, well, the meaning of life is to uncover truths or scientific laws. Other people might say the meaning of life is to be obedient to the God or gods that you in particular serve. And others will say, hey, guess what? There is no meaning. So why don't you just focus on today? Just live as if there isn't one, because there isn't, and you'll be just fine. But others will say, how about you create your own meaning? This is probably the most popular answer that I hear, is this whole idea of like we can just create and we should just create our own meaning. So somebody might say to me, Alycia, I have a great meaning in life because I was able to find the cure for a particular disease, or I was able to help people out of poverty. And I think those things are great and I think that they're important. But what are you saying about your meaning? You're saying I need people to be hungry so that I have a meaning in life. I need people to be sick so that I have a meaning in life. In other words, your meaning is contingent upon somebody else's state of affairs. Creating your own meaning, guys, isn't really going to get you very far. Because if there's no intrinsic meaning in this world, then you can't really create your own, because there's nothing that can give your ultimate life significance. You can have a relative meaning where you feel like I'm doing these really good things, but ultimately it doesn't mean that you do, because if there's a universe that is meaningless, and you can't create meaning out of meaninglessness. The fate is the same for everybody. Whether you're rich or whether you're poor, we die. Whether you're sick or whether you're healthy, we die. Whether you're intelligent or whether you're not, the fate is the same for everybody. So really, does it matter whether or not you existed at all? Does it matter that you lived? Does it matter that you were able to come up with some great new scientific discoveries? Science has shown us that the universe has a beginning. It's not eternal. At one point, people believed that the universe was eternal. But we now recognize, or the scientific community has recognized, I think the Christians always believed it wasn't, but have believed that, you know what, actually the universe has a beginning. But what they've also told us is that since the universe has a beginning, it's actually, we also know that it has an ending. So the universe is going to end in one day, at one day in the future. So does it matter that we found the cure for cancer? Because pretty soon, nothing's going to exist anyways. Does it matter that we did good things? That we fought for justices? We made sure that people lived a life that was fair, that people had equal opportunity. Does any of that matter if we're all just going to end up dead? We can't change what the future outcome is. And so we can create our own meaning and kind of give ourselves a little bit of maybe an emotional crutch to feel like we can get through the day a little bit better. But that's because living life without meaning leads a lot of people to a state of despair. A state of where they just can't see why they should get up and why they should continue on. And it leads people to a state of hopelessness. So do I think that's the real thing? Do I think that we have a hopeless predicament and a hopeless situation because there's no ultimate meaning in this world without God? No. Spoiler alert. I think there's a meaning to life, okay? And I think Christianity has a lot to say about this whole idea of meaning. Number one, Christianity tells us that we are created to be in a special relationship with our God. God doesn't create humans because he was sitting around and was like, hey, I'm really bored. Or I need somebody to talk to. Or hey, I don't know what to do today, so, let me create something. That's not what he creates. He doesn't create out of need. He doesn't create because he's lacking. He creates humanity to bring them into relationship with him, for them to experience him, the greatest, most perfect, most good, most best thing that ever could be. So he creates not for his benefit, but for ours. A special relationship with our Creator that other species don't get. That's why you see in Psalm 8, the psalmist writes, "Oh Lord, our Lord, how majestic is your name." in all the earth. You have set your glory above the heavens. From the lips of children and infants, you have ordained praise because of your enemies to silence the foe and the avengers. When I think of your goodness, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars which you have set in place, what is man that you are mindful of him, and the Son of Man that you care for him? In other words, you definitely have a meaning. And to consider this whole topic of meaning, we need to get a better understanding of why did God create. So going back to Genesis, it's really interesting because it talks about how God was walking in the garden in the cool of the day. In other words, there's a closeness that he intended with these humans that he made. And if there's a closeness, that means he intends to be known, he intends to be near, he intends to be in relationship. Bringing these humans into a perfectly loving, good relationship with him. And so the fact that you existed versus non-existing actually matters. It actually does. You actually are important. And not, as Bertrand Russell once stated, the outcome of accidental collocations of atoms. That's not who you are. And so if Christianity is true, it means that you are able to, in a beautiful way, find out who you are in God. Ecclesiastes 12 also helps us to understand our meaning. It encourages us to fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the duty of all mankind. In other words, now that you're here, notice that God creates people to live here for a reason. In other words, he intends for them to enjoy the creation around them. He intends for them to enjoy animals and the trees and the sunsets and the sound of the ocean waves. He intends them to enjoy each other, people, humanity, family, and friends, neighbors, co-workers, classmates. But he also wants us to use whatever gifts and talents that we have towards the betterment of other people. And in so doing, you're living out your meaning and even a greater meaning that God has for humanity. Your life brings glory to God by the way that you encourage others, by the way you stand up for the outcast, the way that you respond to certain difficulties or certain trials or certain tough moments in life. Your gifts, your talents as a musician, as an athlete, as an artist, whatever it may be, all carry out your meaning in life. In Matthew, one of my favorite verses of the Bible, Matthew 5:16 says, "Let your light shine before men, that they may see your good works and glorify your Father who is in heaven." What is that saying? In other words, let who Jesus is in you show to other people. And so through your actions and your words and the things you say, they find him attractive. Through the way they see you sacrifice yourself for other people, they can now understand a God of sacrifice. Through the way that you show love to other people, they can now understand why Christianity talks about a God who doesn't just love, but he is love itself. The meaning of your life isn't just to exist, but it's to know who God is, to be in relationship with him, and to therefore live as he intended for you to live in this world and in this creation. So I kind of think of it kind of like this. Let's say that it's Christmas time and a father wants to give his son a gift for Christmas. And he decides that the best thing he can do for his son is to give him a gift of a barn. So he makes this plain wooden barn for his young son. Let's say the son is 5 years old, for the young son to play. And he opens the barn up on Christmas Day, and the son is just elated and he's excited. And the father sits back and he watches with joy as the son is bringing his animals into the barn, and as he's talking between the farmer and the animals, and he's saying all different kind of things, and that brings the father joy because he's enjoying his creation. He's happy to see the son playing and enjoying the barn that he made. But it's interesting. The father did something very intentional. He made that barn out of plain wood. Now, why do that? Because the father knows that his son loves to paint. And so while the father could have painted the barn for him, he's left his son the ability to use his gifts and talents to be able to further appreciate the creation that the father has made for him. But you know what else happens? Is the son, after playing with this barn for a while, decides, you know what? This is pretty fun. I'm having a good time, but wouldn't it be even more fun if my dad was playing with me? And so he invites the father in to play. And now the two of them can build things together. They can think through how to design the barn together. They can paint it. They can decorate it. In other words, the goal of building the barn was so that the father and the son could enjoy it together, play with it together, laugh as they tell stories together. And this ultimately is the end goal of the father's labor, to create in a way that his son experiences the joy of knowing the father both with him and in his father's creation with him. But not only him. What if the son decides, hey, you know what? How about bring my sister in and she can play with us too? And now what's happened? Now the sister has joined into the plan that the father has intended. And now the son and the daughter are enjoying this barn together. And so in this way, as long as the son and the father are together, any way that the son chooses to utilize that barn, as a toy, not something to hit his sister over the head with, right? Any way that this son uses this barn will bring joy and pleasure and fulfillment to the son and the father, and even the sister. And because the father will always be wiser and better, they will never grow tired of playing with him. He'll always have more ideas. He'll always be innovative. He'll always know another way that they can play with this barn because he made it. And he knows the best way in which it's designed to function. So they will never grow tired of being a part of his plan and his creation. So does your life have meaning? Absolutely. To know God and experience his goodness both in him and in the world that we live in, using your life in servitude to him and his desires. You weren't created just to enjoy the world of the next, but also of the now. And just like a watchmaker knows how best to use his watch, not as a hammer, but as something to tell time, so God is able to best tell us how to enjoy him and his creation and the world and everything in it. Now, why does any of this matter? I know some of you are still saying, Alycia, I'm 18. Actually, I feel like I'm doing pretty good. The meaning of my life is to graduate high school. Like, that's as far as my meaning goes right now. Okay? Well, let me see if I can help you understand this a little bit better. Let's say there's a young girl who comes and she spends 3 hours drawing a picture for me. Let's say she's 8. And she draws a picture for me. And because she's only 8, it's all in like one color. And it's just a bunch of scribbles and it looks kind of crazy. But I'm like, okay. So when she brings it to me and says, Alycia, this is a gift I have for you. I really want you to enjoy it. I worked really hard on it. I'm like, great. And then she runs up the room to go play. And I take it and crunch it up and throw it in the trash. I know I'm really bad, aren't I? I heard somebody gasp. I really didn't do this, guys. Don't worry, okay? Well, let's say 20 minutes goes by, and then she comes in again. Alycia, where's your picture I gave you? And now I'm in trouble. I'm like, what had happened and I finally say, look, I threw it away. And this 8-year-old has this meltdown. I mean, she just falls on the ground, and she's a mess. And I'm like, dude, what is the deal right now? Okay? It was just a picture. Calm down. And she's like, but Alycia, I spent time making this picture 3 hours. And you know what else? I used a special crayon that I borrowed from my friend because I wanted the special color to be on that picture. Now, how do I feel about throwing that picture away? In other words, I understood a little bit more of the story. I understood more of the background behind this. And then now I saw it as valuable. You only appreciate with a partial understanding. You only appreciate your life with a partial understanding until you understand the greater purpose behind it. So it's important that you know your meaning. The second thing as to why we need to know our meaning is because we need something to live for. This is probably one of the biggest issues that I am, and probably a lot of my other colleagues, my other speakers are dealing with, is people looking for a reason to live, a motivation. I want to read you a story. It's an anonymous story. I don't know, so obviously I don't know the author. I found it on a website, which is a website that supports people who are suffering from depression. And I want to read you, I'm going to read you a condensed version because it's much longer. I'm just going to paraphrase some of it. But this is what somebody wrote on this website, June of 2016. Hello, everyone. First post here. I'm a 44-year-old white male. I'm in reasonably good health. I have a well-paying job and my own business and a grown son whom I love. I have no significant other at the moment, and I'm significantly overweight and currently dealing with alcoholism. I've been suicidal and depressed in the past and have tried treatment, therapy, and medications, but I have a great relationship with my mother and stepfather. Issues with my biological father, we don't speak, my choice. But I was married for 7 years back in my 20s to a person who was not right for me at all. Since then, I've been in 2 major relationships. That was just a little background. When I was about 4 years old, I had my first existential realization. I can vividly remember thinking, where would I be if I never existed? It was a very frightening thought for someone so young to have, and I think it came from a dream I had. I had this thought many times as a very young child, just trying to wrap my head around the idea of non-existence. Time went by and life happened and I grew up. And at the age of 16 or so, I got involved in a very fundamentalist Christian religion. In that religion, we had all of life's answers. We had a purpose to our lives and a bright future living forever in peace and happiness. About 3 years ago, I began to realize that all that I believed was false, that there was simply no proof for God or the Bible, and my world crumbled. Well, not my world, but my belief system. I see absolutely no meaning to life at all. We exist and then we die. We are here a very short time and there is no guidance or purpose to our lives. Ask yourself this. In 1,000 years, who will even know that you ever existed at all? The chances are that answer is no one. You will not even be a memory. Do you know about or remember your great-great-great-great-grandfather? No. My point is this. Why live at all? What is the possible meaning of any of it? We eat, we procreate, we sleep, and then we die. Rinse and repeat. It's all just so pointless and mundane and meaningless. And I'm tired of it. The only time I find any joy in anything is when I'm drunk. Sex, drunkenness, being high, whatever. Just living the daily life. All that matters, not at all in the end. So again, my question, why continue to live at all? I know if I were to carry out something really horrific, it would hurt my family. But really, ultimately, in the end, my family's all going to be dead. So even though I'd cause them pain now, it wouldn't matter. I've heard all the philosophical arguments. We're free to define our own meaning in life. But to me, that's laughable and absurd. Find our own meaning? What does that even mean? All it means is we find a distraction, something to occupy our minds so that we don't think about the huge reality that looms on each and every one of us, that we are going to die and be dead forever. And all memory of us and anything we ever thought or did will be gone. Find your own meaning? Ha. So I don't even know why I'm reaching out to all you anonymous, faceless people out here in the void anyways. I've read 1 billion hours on other forums about this topic and not one new idea or one single idea or thought that really takes any of the meaninglessness of this fact away from my mind. We are all going to die, and our life is pointless. This is an example of what living life without meaning can feel like for somebody. For those that think creating our own meaning is good enough because there isn't one and that will fix things, I don't know if that's possible. So I think we need to care about the fact that do we have a meaning or not is a question that we should really seek to answer. Now, thankfully, as a Christian, I believe we have a meaning, and I just kind of went through some of that. And if you believe in God, then you believe that you have a meaning. And it's important that you grasp that because you need to care about you. You need to care about you being the best person that you can be. It's our purpose for existence that gives us our meaning. And if you don't know why you're here, you won't know what to do while you're here and you'll fall into a life that feels empty. And it feels full of void. And so perhaps this unsettlement we have, we feel like there must be more to this life because this life isn't all there is. Maybe everything this world offers us still falls short because this world ultimately isn't the great fulfillment that we may want it to be. The reality is God isn't going to force himself on humanity, but I guarantee you that true life now and in the future exists, not in experiencing a place, but rather a closeness and intimacy with God. Living your life with meaning is important because it influences the way that you see everyday life. Do I have any movie fans in here? Okay. All right. I may not be quite as smart as some of you, but the first time I watched Inception, I was thoroughly confused. Okay? Did I have any Inception watchers? Okay, were any of you also confused? Okay, great. So we can just all be confused together. That's fine. That makes me feel better. Okay? I was like, it finished, and I'm like, what just happened? And so what did I do? You watch it again. Okay? And the second time you watch a movie, you experience it differently. You see things that you didn't see the first time. You understand things better than you did the first time. You hear things different than the first time. Why? What's different between the second time and the first time? The second time you watch a movie, you know the ending. And because you know the ending, it changes the way in which you experience that movie. Changes the way in which you watch it. Changes the way in which you see it. Changes the way in which you understand what's happening. Changing or knowing the ending changes your experience. My mother is from Jamaica, and my grandmother, so her mother, was this absolutely adorable 5'0" Jamaican lady. Okay? If you guys don't have a Jamaican grandma in your life, you need to go find someone who does and borrow theirs, okay? Okay, they're just amazing and so cute. She only went up to about like 6th grade, I think, in Jamaica. I don't even think she finished that. It was a different generation, and, you know, kids have to leave school so they can go help work and provide for the family. And so at a young age, she went off to work, and she could read and write and do those kind of things, but she wasn't the most intellectually smart, we could say. And when I was a kid, I remember sleeping over her house. And I'd wake up early in the morning, and she would always have the Bible in front of her early in the morning. And she would be praying. And I remember watching her and being like, what is it like to feel so close to God like that? You know, I was kind of like, I'm a kid, so I really don't know what that's like. But maybe when I'm, 15 or like 20, then I'll know what all that's like. And so I'd watch her pray, and I think, man, to myself, one day I'm going to be like her. One day I'm going to feel close to God like that. Well, several years ago, we noticed that when we went over to visit her, the stove would be left on. Or there'd be food sitting in there that was burnt. Or stuff just didn't seem quite right. And so we realized maybe we need to take her to the doctor and see what's going on. So we bring her to the doctor, and they have us leave, and the doctor runs some tests on her. And then he brings us back in, and he says, all right, there's several things that this could be. But the most probable thing is that she is beginning stages of Alzheimer's disease. Now, many of you are probably familiar with Alzheimer's. Basically, your body, you start to forget things. And so essentially your body, as time goes on, you don't talk, or you just forget people, family members that you've known for your long time. It could be your spouse. It could be a parent. It could be a sibling. It could be whatever. You just start to forget all of these memories. And so I was pretty sad. And I remember my aunt was paying the bill. We went to the doctor's office. My aunt was paying the bill. And I remember I think it was hitting me. And I said, Grandma, do you really understand what this doctor meant? What he said? So I'm like, she probably doesn't understand what he's saying. She goes, Alycia, don't you worry. I understood everything. I understood it all. I was like, okay. And so I started to tear up because I was just like, I don't know if I can handle this. And she comes over to me, says, Alycia, don't you worry about it. I'm going to be fine. Whenever God takes me, I'll be just fine. And she goes, how are your brother and sister? I was like, oh, Grandma, they're okay. They're fine. And I kind of walk over to the window, and I'm kind of looking out the window. And like 10 seconds later, she goes, Alycia. And I say, yeah, I turn around. And she goes, how are your brother and sister? And in just those 10 seconds, she had already forgotten she had asked me that question. Well, as time went on, it came time to put her in a nursing home because her level of independent ability was deteriorating. And we put her in her home. And I went to visit her about 3 months before she passed away. And my sister and I were in the room, and we were reading the Bible to her, but she had a roommate. And this roommate was very upset. This roommate was just there saying, nobody loves me, and nobody remembers me, and nobody cares about me, and I'm all alone. And she's just saying all of these things. And my grandmother's just sitting there. She's not saying a word. By this point, my grandmother hadn't talked in probably 1.5 years, 2 years. So she would just sit there. I think she recognized me. I wasn't really sure. By this stage, I don't really know. It used to be when I came in, she would at least smile. Now, by this point, you're just not sure what they see or experience or know. So she was sitting there. She was just quiet as the roommate was just upset. So I went to the nurse. I said, look, you may need to help her. And the nurses came in and they said, you know what? You're not alone. Your daughter comes in every Saturday. She's always here. She always sees you. And they're trying to reassure her. And so finally it comes time for me, and my sister was there, and it was time for us to leave. And so we're lowering my grandmother back down in the bed. It's kind of one of those beds that raises up, like you push a button, it raises up and it lowers down. And my grandmother starts mumbling. So I put my ear closer to her. I don't know why, because to be honest, she's been mumbling for a while, and it's just, there's no words. But I just leaned over and I put my ear closer to her. And it's clear as day. It's clear as day. I hear this woman who hasn't spoken to me in 2 years go from mumble, mumble, mumble to thank the Lord, and then went back to mumbling. The very last words I ever heard my grandmother say were, thank the Lord. I don't know what she understood in that moment. I don't know what she was able to comprehend. I don't know if it was a mistake. I don't know. I just know she went from mumbling to saying, thank the Lord, and then went back to mumbling. And I said to her, yes, Grandma, thank the Lord. This is a woman who had lived her whole life to one day see the face of God. And because she knew the ending, it impacted how she lived every single day of her life. The meaning of her life was not only wrapped up in her accomplishments, but also in her relationship with her God. And so this meant that even in illness and in death, nothing about her was lost. When Jesus says that he is the way, the truth, and the life, he means it. And knowing the life changes the way that you live this one. Knowing your meaning changes the way that you live this one, because you know how this story ends.
Wow, what a powerful message from Alycia about the meaning of life and just the life that we can find in Jesus. Thank you just again so much for joining with us tonight. Please tune in tomorrow night at the same time at 5:40 p.m. Eastern Standard Time when we'll hear from Joe Vitale on Why the Cross. And if you are